The military officers at Fort Braxton thought they knew exactly who Rebecca Cross was. For 8 months, she had been the invisible waitress who served their meals in the classified dining facility, with quiet efficiency. With her stunning blonde hair pulled back in a regulation ponytail, and bright blue eyes hidden behind the kind of tired expression that suggested long shifts and small tips, she looked like exactly what they expected: another civilian contractor trying to make ends meet by serving food to important people. What they didn't know was that the beautiful woman they barely noticed while discussing classified operations was hiding a secret that would soon expose the most dangerous security breach in military dining history, and her accidental revelation would prove that some of the deadliest operatives hide behind the most ordinary uniforms. But this morning was different. As Rebecca wiped down tables after the breakfast shift, her trained ear caught fragments of conversation that made her blood run cold. Embedded within casual officer chatter about weekend plans was intelligence that no dining facility worker should have been able to understand. Details about classified operations that suggested someone was using meal times to pass sensitive information to unauthorized personnel. The beautiful waitress was about to discover that her 8-month undercover mission was only the beginning of a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of base command. Staff Sergeant Rebecca Phantom Cross moved through the Fort Braxton Officers Club dining facility with the practiced efficiency of someone whose job was to remain invisible while others ate and talked around her. At 26, she possessed the kind of natural beauty that should have made her memorable among the military personnel she served: platinum blonde hair that caught the overhead lighting, bright blue eyes that seemed to absorb every detail, and delicate features that suggested she belonged somewhere more glamorous than a military cafeteria. But Rebecca had spent years perfecting the art of service industry invisibility. Her uniform was always clean but never crisp. Her makeup was minimal but professional. Her demeanor was helpful but forgettable. She had transformed herself into the kind of person that officers looked through while discussing sensitive matters, treating her presence as furniture rather than a potential security concern. The transformation hadn't been easy. 2 years ago, Rebecca Cross had been one of the most effective intelligence operatives in the Central Intelligence Agency. As a member of the agency's Special Activities Division, she had conducted classified operations in 8 different countries, earned commendations for her work in counterintelligence, and developed a reputation among CIA personnel that bordered on legendary for her ability to extract information from seemingly impossible situations. Then, Operation Blackbird had gone catastrophically wrong, and 6 intelligence operatives had died in a NATO facility in Eastern Europe. 6 operatives whose mission had been compromised not by enemy surveillance, but by someone inside American intelligence who had sold their operational details to hostile networks for profit. Rebecca was the only survivor, and she had spent the past 2 years methodically working her way back into the system that had betrayed her team. Her waitress cover identity was perfect, so unremarkable that officers forgot she existed even while she served their meals and overheard their most sensitive conversations. Cross called Sergeant Major Williams from the kitchen pass-through window. His voice carried the casual authority of someone accustomed to managing civilian contractors. "Table 12 needs their coffee refilled, and make sure you get their orders right this time. These aren't regular soldiers, they're staff officers." "Of course, Sergeant Major," Rebecca replied, her voice carrying just the right note of civilian deference mixed with working-class determination. "I'll take extra care with their service." Williams nodded absently before disappearing back into the kitchen management area. In his mind, Cross was competent but unremarkable, exactly what she needed him to think. But as Williams's attention shifted elsewhere, Rebecca's expression changed almost imperceptibly. For just a moment, the waitress facade slipped, replaced by something else entirely. Her posture straightened to perfect operational bearing, her eyes sharpened with the kind of situational awareness that came from years of intelligence work, and her movements gained the fluid precision that spoke of training most people would never experience. Then, just as quickly, she adjusted her apron, picked up the coffee pot, and became invisible again. The Fort Braxton Officers Club dining facility operated with the controlled chaos of any restaurant during peak hours, but with the added complexity of serving personnel who discussed classified matters over their meals. Rebecca's section covered 12 tables in the main dining area, where field-grade officers gathered for breakfast meetings that often involved sensitive operational planning. "How do you do it?" asked Maria Santos, the dishwasher who worked the morning shift alongside Rebecca. Santos was 19, fresh from technical school, and still impressed by the complex social dynamics of military hierarchy. "You've been here 8 months, and I've never seen you get rattled by any of these officers. Some of them can be real demanding." Rebecca looked up from the order pad where she had been recording breakfast requests for a table of lieutenant colonels. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was taking meal orders from officers whose operational security she could assess with greater expertise than most intelligence professionals. "You just learned to read people," she replied with a self-deprecating smile that had taken months to perfect. "Most of them are decent enough if you're professional and don't get in their way when they're discussing important matters." What Rebecca didn't mention was that her ability to read people came from years of analyzing behavioral patterns, voice stress indicators, and micro-expressions as part of advanced CIA interrogation training. She could assess the emotional state, stress levels, and truthfulness of every officer in her section while appearing to simply refill their coffee cups. Still, Santos persisted, "You pick up on stuff that other servers miss. Remember last week when you noticed that Major Henderson was having problems with his security clearance? You figured that out just from listening to him order breakfast." Rebecca's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. That incident had been particularly concerning. Henderson had been discussing classified personnel matters with another officer, revealing information that should have been compartmentalized. The beautiful irony was that her waitress cover allowed her to identify security violations that the official counterintelligence staff would never detect. "I just pay attention to people's moods," Rebecca said, returning her attention to her order pad. "It helps with service." Colonel Marcus Webb approached their station, his expression serious and his stride purposeful. Webb was one of Fort Braxton's most respected intelligence officers, known for his analytical precision and his ability to identify threats that others missed. At 45, he had built a career on being more observant than everyone around him, and he had the security clearances to prove it. "Cross," Webb said, stopping beside her station. "I need you to handle the private dining room this morning. We're having a classified briefing that requires additional operational security." As Webb spoke, their eyes met briefly. Rebecca caught something in the colonel's expression, a fleeting look of assessment that suggested he noticed more about the dining facility operations than most officers did. "Of course, sir," Rebecca replied, accepting the assignment with the appropriate level of civilian compliance. "Should I follow any special service protocols?" "Discretion is essential," Webb said, his tone carefully neutral but carrying an undertone that suggested he trusted her professional capabilities more than a standard waitress should warrant. "The discussions will involve sensitive operational matters." After Webb departed, Santos shook her head in amazement. "He really trusts you with the classified stuff. Most contractors never get assigned to the secure dining areas." "I guess I've proven reliable over the past 8 months," Rebecca said. But internally she felt a flutter of concern. Being noticed was dangerous in intelligence work, especially by someone as perceptive as Colonel Webb. The best cover identities were the ones that made people look through you, not at you. But as Rebecca prepared to serve the classified briefing, her trained instincts began identifying patterns that made her increasingly uneasy. The officers attending the meeting included personnel from different command structures who normally wouldn't coordinate operations. Their body language suggested stress levels that exceeded routine briefing anxiety. Most concerning, she recognized 2 individuals whose presence at Fort Braxton wasn't explained by any official personnel assignments she'd observed. Someone was using the dining facility to coordinate activities that went beyond normal operational planning, and the pattern suggested security implications that could compromise ongoing intelligence operations. The beautiful waitress, who appeared to be simply serving coffee and taking meal orders, was actually conducting the kind of behavioral analysis and security assessment that would normally require a team of counterintelligence specialists. But Rebecca's CIA background gave her unique insight into operational security. She knew exactly what kinds of meetings required additional secrecy because she had been on the operational side of such briefings during her previous career. More importantly, she recognized specific signs of compartmentalized information sharing because she had seen similar patterns just before her own team had been betrayed 2 years ago. "Cross." Colonel Webb's voice carried an edge of urgency as he approached her station again. "I need you in the private dining room immediately. We're starting the briefing early." "What's the change in schedule, sir?" Rebecca asked, though she already suspected the answer based on the behavioral patterns she had been observing. "Security concerns. We've received intelligence suggesting potential operational compromises that require immediate assessment." As Webb spoke, Rebecca felt the familiar surge of operational adrenaline she had once experienced during high-stakes intelligence operations. Her CIA training had taught her to recognize the signs of systematic information leaks, and what she was seeing pointed to something far more dangerous than casual security lapses. "Sir," she said carefully, her voice maintaining the perfect tone of helpful civilian concern, "should I prepare additional security measures for the dining service? I've noticed some unusual activity patterns that might be relevant." Webb paused, studying her with renewed attention. Something in her tone or phrasing had caught his interest in a way that made Rebecca mentally curse her momentary lapse in cover discipline. "Unusual activity patterns," Webb repeated slowly.
That's a fairly sophisticated observation for dining facility staff, Cross. What kind of patterns are you referring to? Rebecca felt her pulse quicken, but her expression remained perfectly controlled. I apologize if I overstepped, sir. I just noticed some irregularities in personnel presence and meeting schedules that seemed different from normal operational rhythm. Webb's expression shifted from mild interest to sharp focus as he processed her words. Show me what you've observed. For the next 10 minutes, Rebecca walked Webb through her observations, carefully presenting her findings in a way that suggested careful attention to service details rather than intelligence analysis. But as she spoke, highlighting behavioral patterns and operational anomalies that painted a clear picture of systematic security violations, she could see Webb recognizing the sophistication of her assessment. This level of situational awareness, Webb said slowly, his voice carrying a mixture of amazement and growing suspicion. This isn't customer service observation, Cross. This is behavioral analysis at a very high level. This is the kind of pattern recognition that requires specialized training and operational experience. I've always been observant, sir, Rebecca replied, but she could feel her carefully constructed cover identity beginning to strain under Webb's scrutiny. Working in food service, you learn to read people's moods and routines. Webb continued studying her analysis, his expression growing increasingly troubled as he absorbed the implications. Cross, the patterns you've identified here, they suggest security breaches that our official counterintelligence staff hasn't detected. These behavioral correlations indicate systematic information sharing that threatens ongoing classified operations. But this revelation would have to wait, because as Webb spoke, his secure communication device began beeping with an emergency alert tone. His face went white as he read the message, and Rebecca could see enough of the screen to understand that another intelligence operation had been compromised. Another CIA team hit 6 hours ago, Webb said grimly after reviewing the alert, his voice carrying the weight of operational failure and lost lives. Enemy forces had advance warning of the operation. Complete tactical surprise was compromised. That was when Rebecca's careful emotional control finally cracked. Sir, how many operatives were lost? Rebecca asked, her voice carrying an urgency and personal investment that surprised both of them. The question came from 2 years of suppressed rage and professional grief, not from civilian curiosity about military operations. Webb noticed the change immediately, his analytical mind registering the shift in her tone, posture, and emotional engagement. That's classified information, Cross. Why would a dining facility worker need? Because if it's the Prague operation using Team Alpha protocols, those operatives were utilizing communication procedures that were compromised 3 days ago, based on the activity patterns I just showed you, Rebecca interrupted, then immediately realized her catastrophic mistake. The silence that followed was deafening. How, Webb asked very slowly, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper, would a waitress know about Prague operations, or about Team Alpha protocols, or about communication procedures that are classified above your supposed security clearance level? Rebecca felt 8 months of meticulous planning and careful cover construction beginning to unravel in real time. But before she could formulate a response that might salvage her operational security, her emergency communication device, the one that wasn't supposed to exist in her waitress cover identity, began vibrating with a code sequence that every CIA operative knew by heart. Webb's eyes widened as he noticed the device outline in her apron pocket. That's an agency emergency communicator, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Those devices are only issued to active intelligence operatives. They're not supposed to exist in civilian facilities. The moment Rebecca had spent 8 months preparing for had arrived, but not in the controlled manner she had planned. But the emergency would have to wait, because as Rebecca reached for her device, Colonel Webb stepped closer with an expression that suggested he had been conducting his own investigation. Behind him appeared 2 individuals that Rebecca recognized immediately, counterintelligence officers, whose presence meant her cover was either being investigated or had already been blown. I think it's time we had that conversation, Staff Sergeant Cross, Webb said, using a rank that wasn't supposed to exist in her cover identity. Your real conversation. Sir, Rebecca said, her voice steady despite the collapse of 8 months of careful planning, I need you to know that everything I'm about to tell you is classified at levels that exceed your current security clearance. Webb's expression shifted from confusion to a mixture of wariness and intense curiosity. Cross, who the hell are you really? Before Rebecca could answer, the emergency device vibrated again, this time with a sequence that made her blood run cold. It was the code for cover blown, extract immediately, hostile forces active. I'm Rebecca Cross, Central Intelligence Agency, Special Activities Division, she said, finally allowing her true operational bearing to show completely. The transformation was remarkable. The waitress facade vanished entirely, replaced by someone whose very presence radiated the controlled lethality that came from years of elite intelligence training. That's impossible, Webb breathed, his mind struggling to reconcile the unremarkable service worker he had known with the intelligence operative standing before him. CIA doesn't embed operatives in military dining facilities. Officially, we don't conduct domestic operations, Rebecca agreed, her posture now reflecting perfect intelligence community bearing. Unofficially, When American operatives are being systematically betrayed by someone inside our own facilities, standard protocols become insufficient. Webb stared at her, trying to process the complete transformation of someone he thought he knew. The behavioral analysis you showed me was based on 8 months of methodically observing classified discussions while maintaining service cover, Rebecca confirmed. The security breach isn't accidental espionage, sir. It's systematic information sharing coordinated through this dining facility, and American intelligence personnel are dying for someone's profit. Colonel Webb activated a signal scrambler that Rebecca hadn't known existed in the dining facility. The fact that Webb possessed such equipment immediately shifted Rebecca's assessment of the entire situation. I've been watching the operational security of this facility for 6 months, Webb said without preamble, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had been conducting his own investigation. Dining facility workers don't possess the kind of situational awareness you've been displaying. They don't instinctively assess personnel for threat indicators. They don't unconsciously catalog classified information patterns while serving meals. Rebecca maintained her operational bearing but remained silent, evaluating the tactical situation and trying to determine whether Webb represented support or threat. More importantly, Webb continued, they don't conduct behavioral analysis at a level that surpasses our professional counterintelligence staff. Your pattern recognition capabilities suggested either advanced training or hostile infiltration. The implication hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Sir, Rebecca said carefully, my operational orders came directly from CIA Langley through classified channels. My mission parameters were to identify and eliminate the intelligence leak that has been systematically compromising agency operations worldwide. And what have you discovered? Webb asked. Rebecca reached behind the coffee station and withdrew a sealed folder that Webb had never seen before, despite observing the dining facility for 6 months. The intelligence leak isn't random espionage conducted by foreign agents. Someone inside Fort Braxton Command is systematically feeding operational intelligence to hostile networks through coordinated meetings disguised as routine dining interactions. She opened the folder, revealing a comprehensive dossier that represented 8 months of meticulous investigation, behavioral analysis, and evidence collection. The compromised operations aren't random targets, Rebecca explained, her voice carrying the precision of an intelligence briefing. They're specifically chosen to benefit particular defense contractors, to justify specific budget allocations, and to advance certain political careers. American intelligence personnel are dying to serve someone's financial and political interests. Webb's face hardened as he reviewed the documentation, his expression shifting from confusion to growing anger. This is treason at the highest levels of military leadership. Yes, sir. And the perpetrator has been using dining facility interactions to coordinate information transfers, while monitoring how close various investigations are getting to identifying them. They've been watching the watchers. Webb's expression sharpened with professional interest. Meaning they know your cover has been compromised? Sir, I believe they've known for several weeks that I represent a threat to their operation. The emergency signal I just received isn't from my CIA handlers. It's a warning that hostile forces are moving to neutralize me. As if summoned by her words, the dining facility's main door opened without the usual casual entry of regular personnel. General Patricia Morrison entered, flanked by 2 military police officers, whose equipment and bearing suggested they were prepared for significant resistance. I'm sorry to interrupt the lunch service, General Morrison said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, and a tone that carried barely concealed menace, but I need to speak with Miss Cross immediately. There are some serious irregularities in her employment background that require immediate attention and resolution. The temperature in the dining facility seemed to drop 10 degrees as Rebecca's CIA-trained instincts fully activated. She assessed the tactical situation in milliseconds. 2 military police officers positioned to block primary and secondary exits. General Morrison maintaining casual conversation while clearly prepared for violent resistance, and Colonel Webb's body language suggesting he recognized the threat. Of course, ma'am, Rebecca replied, her voice maintaining the perfect tone of cooperative civilian staff despite her mental preparation for operational response. Should I bring any specific employment documentation?
Just yourself, Miss Cross. This conversation won't take very long. But as General Morrison spoke, Rebecca caught a barely perceptible hand signal from Colonel Webb, a gesture that meant hostile forces identified. Prepare for defensive action. General, Colonel Webb interjected with diplomatic authority. Perhaps we should handle any employment concerns through proper civilian contractor channels. If there are questions about one of the dining facility staff members, this is a Fort Braxton security matter, Colonel, Morrison interrupted, her tone hardening significantly. Above your operational clearance level and outside your jurisdictional authority. That's when Rebecca noticed something that made her blood run cold. One of the military police officers was carrying equipment she recognized from her CIA training, a tactical restraint kit, typically used for extraordinary rendition operations rather than standard military detention procedures. They weren't here to question her about employment irregularities. They were here to make her disappear permanently. Ma'am, Rebecca said, rising from her position behind the coffee station, with the fluid grace that came from years of operational training. "Before we proceed with any employment discussions, I think you should know that my intelligence assessment has already been transmitted to CIA Langley, along with comprehensive evidence identifying the systematic information leak we've been tracking for 8 months. General Morrison's expression flickered almost imperceptibly, a micro-expression that confirmed Rebecca's assessment of the situation. "I'm not sure what you mean, Miss Cross," Morrison replied, but her voice had lost some of its casual authority. "I mean the systematic compromise of CIA operations over the past 2 years," Rebecca replied, allowing her true operational bearing to show completely now. "I mean the deliberate exposure of classified missions to benefit defense contractors who contribute to specific political campaigns. I mean the deaths of American intelligence personnel to advance personal financial interests." The dining facility fell completely silent as the implications of her words settled over everyone present. "And I mean," Rebecca continued, reaching slowly toward her apron with practiced casualness, "the evidence that identifies you as the primary source of those intelligence leaks, General Morrison." General Morrison's carefully maintained facade finally cracked completely. "Miss Cross, you're making extremely serious accusations without understanding the larger strategic picture or the political considerations involved." "Am I?" Rebecca's hand moved to her apron pocket with the kind of controlled movement that suggested tactical preparation. "Or am I understanding the strategic picture perfectly?" "General," Colonel Webb said carefully, stepping slightly forward in a way that positioned him between Morrison and Rebecca, "I believe we need to involve proper investigative channels and legal counsel before this situation escalates any further. This ends here and now," Morrison said firmly, nodding to the military police officers who began advancing toward Rebecca with professional caution. That's when Rebecca's apron caught on the coffee station equipment in what appeared to be an accident but was actually a precisely calculated tactical movement. The contents of her apron pockets spilled across the dining facility floor, creating what looked like service clumsiness but was actually a defensive positioning strategy. Among the scattered order pads, pens, and routine service supplies, something metallic caught the overhead lighting, a distinctive CIA identification badge that made everyone in the room freeze in recognition. The Central Intelligence Agency credential lay on the dining facility floor like evidence at a crime scene, its distinctive design unmistakable to every military professional present. The badge represented the highest levels of intelligence training, operational capability, and security clearance capabilities that no civilian contractor should possess. Colonel Webb's mouth opened in shock as he processed the implications. "Jesus Christ, Cross, you really are CIA." But Rebecca wasn't looking at Webb or the military police officers. Her eyes were locked on General Morrison, whose expression had transformed from administrative authority to something approaching panic. "The badge was supposed to be destroyed when you were declared killed in action," Morrison said, her voice now carrying a deadly edge that revealed her true knowledge of classified operations. "Along with all evidence of the operation, you were never supposed to survive." But the revelation that would change everything was yet to come, because as the military police officers hesitated in the face of Rebecca's exposed identity, she made a decision that would expose 2 years of systematic betrayal. "You set up my entire team," Rebecca said, her voice carrying the kind of controlled lethality that made both military police officers step backward involuntarily. "Operation Blackbird wasn't compromised by enemy intelligence or operational security failures. It was sabotaged directly from Fort Braxton Command." General Morrison's composure finally shattered completely. "You were supposed to die in Prague with the rest of your unit, Agent Cross. Your survival creates complications that threaten strategic national security interests." "Whose national security interests?" Rebecca demanded, rising to her full height and allowing her complete CIA bearing to show. "Or whose personal bank accounts?" "Agent," one of the military police officers said nervously, clearly uncomfortable with the rapidly evolving situation, "we have orders to escort you for security questioning." Rebecca looked at him with the kind of expression that had once made hostile intelligence officers abandon interrogation attempts. "Officer, I strongly recommend you verify those orders with your actual chain of command before following instructions from someone who's about to be arrested for treason and the systematic murder of American intelligence personnel." "This is absolutely absurd," General Morrison declared, but her voice had lost all semblance of authority. "I'm a general officer with 30 years of distinguished service. My word." "Your word," Colonel Webb interrupted, holding up his own secure tablet with evidence that had been loading during the entire conversation, "is being systematically contradicted by 8 months of comprehensive evidence that Agent Cross has been transmitting to proper intelligence authorities." He turned the tablet screen toward everyone present. "Evidence that's currently being reviewed by the Director of Central Intelligence, the Secretary of Defense, and the Senate Intelligence Committee."
Rebecca smiled with cold satisfaction that had been building for 2 years. "The beautiful thing about conducting deep cover operations for 8 months, General, is that I had plenty of time to build a completely ironclad legal case against you." She reached down and picked up her CIA badge, holding it up for everyone in the room to see clearly. "This badge represents 6 elite intelligence operatives who were declared killed in action during Operation Blackbird. Operatives who died not because of enemy action or mission failure, but because someone in Fort Braxton leadership sold their detailed mission information to hostile networks in exchange for defense contract considerations and personal financial gain." Her voice carried 8 months of suppressed rage and professional grief. "I'm the only survivor of that betrayal, and I've spent every single day since then gathering evidence to prove that their deaths weren't operational casualties. They were murders committed for profit and political advancement."
General Morrison made one final desperate attempt to control the narrative. "Even if your accusations had any merit, which they absolutely don't, the strategic importance of certain defense relationships and political considerations outweighs." "The strategic importance," Rebecca interrupted, her voice cutting through Morrison's words like a blade, "of American operatives' lives outweighs your goddamn retirement portfolio and political ambitions." Colonel Webb stepped forward with his secure communications device already connecting to higher authorities. "General Morrison, I'm placing you under immediate detention, pending comprehensive investigation by Army Criminal Investigation Division and CIA Counterintelligence Services." "You don't have the authority to." "Actually, ma'am, I do," Webb replied, his smile carrying razor-sharp satisfaction. "Because while you've been focused on neutralizing Agent Cross, I've been building a parallel investigation through proper intelligence channels. Your financial records and communication patterns make extremely interesting reading when analyzed by professionals." The military police officers looked between the two women, clearly uncertain about their original orders, now that the entire situation had reversed completely. "Officers," Colonel Webb said with newfound authority and moral clarity, "I believe your orders should now focus on detaining General Morrison rather than Agent Cross." As the MPs moved uncertainly toward the general instead of Rebecca, Morrison made one last attempt to salvage her position and maintain control. "This is a Fort Braxton cover-up operation. There are strategic considerations and classified relationships that exceed your understanding." "The only thing being covered up," Rebecca said, adjusting her posture to display full operational bearing and CIA authority, "is your systematic treason and the murder of American intelligence personnel for personal profit." She placed her CIA badge on the nearest dining table like evidence in a federal court proceeding. "Special Agent Rebecca Cross, Central Intelligence Agency Special Activities Division, reporting successful completion of Operation Silent Vengeance. Primary target identified. Comprehensive evidence secured. Mission accomplished with full documentation." The CIA headquarters briefing room was packed with senior intelligence officials, congressional representatives, Defense Department investigators, and agency leadership 3 weeks later. At the center of the formal inquiry sat Rebecca, now wearing her actual CIA credentials and operational decorations that had been hidden for 8 months. "The scope of General Morrison's systematic intelligence compromises," she testified with professional precision, "extended far beyond simple financial gain or political advantage. Her actions directly resulted in the deaths of 47 American intelligence operatives across 23 separate missions conducted over a 2-year period." Congressional Representative Michael Torres leaned forward with intense interest. "Agent Cross, your deep cover operation lasted 8 months and required you to maintain a completely fabricated civilian identity while working inside military command facilities. During that extended period, you had multiple opportunities to reveal yourself to proper authorities. Why did you maintain operational security for such an extended duration?" "Sir, because I needed to develop ironclad evidence that would withstand legal scrutiny in federal court proceedings and congressional investigation." General Morrison had cultivated relationships and influence networks throughout Fort Braxton leadership and defense industry connections. The only way to build an absolutely unassailable case was to document her treasonous activities from the inside over an extended operational period. And during those 8 months you appeared to senior staff to be nothing more than a competent dining facility worker. Rebecca's smile carried a hint of professional pride and operational excellence. "Sir, the most effective cover identities are those that make people look through you instead of at you. Nobody pays serious attention to the person serving their coffee and cleaning their tables." Colonel Webb, now promoted to full colonel and seated at the witness table beside Rebecca, added his professional perspective. "Agent Cross's behavioral analysis capabilities became apparent to me within 4 months of observation, but her operational security protocols were so thoroughly implemented that I couldn't determine whether she was conducting authorized intelligence gathering or whether she represented a potential security threat." "How did you finally confirm her true identity and mission parameters?" when she demonstrated tactical knowledge and operational awareness that no civilian contractor should possess, combined with access to classified information that exceeded her supposed security clearance level. At that point, I initiated my own parallel investigation to determine whether she represented an intelligence asset or a security compromise. Representative Torres nodded with professional appreciation. The subsequent investigation has revealed that General Morrison received over $4 million in defense contractor payments and political contributions in exchange for systematic operational intelligence. Agent Cross, what personal motivation drives an operative to spend 8 months in deep cover to expose this level of systematic corruption? Rebecca's expression hardened with the emotional weight of professional loss and personal commitment. Sir, when you watch your teammates die because someone in military leadership sold their mission details for personal profit, you make an unbreakable promise to yourself and to their memory. Justice becomes the primary mission objective, and failure is not acceptable. She looked directly at the congressional panel with unwavering conviction. 6 CIA operatives died in Prague because General Morrison needed money to fund her post-retirement lifestyle and political connections. I spent 8 months ensuring their deaths wouldn't be meaningless casualties buried under classification levels. The Central Intelligence Agency has announced comprehensive new protocols for operational security based directly on your recommendations and investigation findings. Do you believe these systematic changes will prevent similar intelligence compromises in the future? Sir, I believe that when intelligence personnel know their leadership will aggressively investigate and prosecute betrayal regardless of rank, political connections, or career considerations, it creates a deterrent effect that protects everyone conducting operations in hostile environments. As the formal hearing concluded, Colonel Webb approached Rebecca with genuine respect and professional curiosity. So what's the next assignment for you, Agent? Return to active CIA field operations? Rebecca adjusted her agency credentials, the same ones that had been hidden in her apron pocket for 8 months of careful deception. Sir, I've been assigned to CIA counterintelligence operations with a focus on domestic security threats. Apparently there's recognized value in having operatives who understand how to remain invisible when circumstances require it. She smiled with deep professional satisfaction. Besides, someone with operational experience needs to monitor the people who have access to intelligence operations, and I've developed exceptional skills in being invisible when tactical situations demand it. As she walked through the CIA corridors that would be her new operational environment, Rebecca reflected on the comprehensive transformation. 8 months ago, she had entered Fort Braxton as a grieving operative seeking justice for her systematically betrayed teammates. She was now leaving as the architect of new security protocols that would protect operatives for years to come. The beautiful waitress who had served coffee, taken meal orders, and remained professionally invisible had completed the most strategically important mission of her intelligence career, and she had accomplished it by being exactly what everyone expected her not to be: a lethal CIA operative hiding behind a completely forgettable service industry facade. Some intelligence missions required direct action, advanced technology, and overwhelming resources. Others required the professional patience to remain invisible until the precise moment came to strike with legal and evidentiary precision. Rebecca had proven that the most dangerous operatives were often the ones you never saw coming until they chose to reveal themselves. The CIA badge that had accidentally fallen from her apron during that crucial Fort Braxton confrontation now sat framed in her new counterintelligence office, not as a reminder of her cover identity, but as a symbol of promises kept to fallen teammates and systematic justice delivered against impossible odds. In intelligence operations, mission accomplishment always came first, but individual operatives were never expendable for political or financial considerations. For Agent Rebecca Cross, the mission had evolved beyond tactical objectives to encompass something larger and more enduring, ensuring that no American intelligence operative would ever again be systematically betrayed by the military leadership they trusted to protect them and support their operations. The pretty waitress had reminded everyone in the intelligence community that the most dangerous assumption is thinking you understand who someone really is based on the uniform they wear or the job they appear to be doing. Some of the deadliest operatives in American intelligence hide in the most ordinary places, waiting for the right moment to strike against those who betray the warriors they're supposed to support. 6 months later, a young CIA trainee stood nervously in a different military dining facility, wearing civilian clothes and carrying only an unremarkable service industry identification badge. Her simple appearance and hesitant demeanor drew little attention from the officers discussing classified operations over their meals. The head of dining services approached her with professional courtesy. "You must be the new server we've been expecting. Welcome to Fort Morrison Officers Club." The trainee smiled and nodded, beginning her own deep cover assignment in the ongoing investigation of systematic intelligence leaks. But this time, military personnel had been specifically trained to recognize that the most dangerous threats often looked exactly like the people serving their food.
At CIA headquarters, Rebecca reviewed reports from similar operations at 12 different military installations with satisfaction. The security paradigm was shifting from reactive investigation to proactive infiltration across all facilities with access to sensitive intelligence. Sometimes the best way to catch someone selling secrets was to become invisible in the places where secrets were casually discussed over meals and coffee. And nobody was more invisible than the person refilling your coffee cup while you planned classified operations. The mission Rebecca had started as a grieving operative seeking personal justice had evolved into a systematic program that would protect American intelligence personnel for generations to come. Some promises, she reflected, weren't meant to be completed. They were meant to be lived every single day through continued vigilance and professional dedication. She opened a new classified folder and began planning the next phase of an operation that would continue until every corrupt official was identified and eliminated, one dining facility at a time, for as long as it took to restore honor to the system that was supposed to protect the protectors. The war against domestic enemies wearing friendly uniforms had only just begun, and Agent Rebecca Cross intended to win it, one undercover operation at a time.